In today's video, I'm going to be starting a little two-part series. In this video, I will go over the entirety of 1 Samuel. In my next video, I'll go over all of 2 Samuel. And for being called Samuel, it's a whole fucking lot about David. So, yeah, this will be a very long video. This will probably be the longest video I've ever made. So if you like it, like it. And if you really like it, subscribe. Let's get into it. So, to understand Samuel, you have to understand his father. He is from a part of Israel called Ramathaim Zophim. And his name is Elkanah. That's how I'm going to try to continue pronouncing it throughout this video. See, Elkanah's got two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. And with Peninnah, he's had a bunch of kids, and it's all happy and joy. And then with Hannah, nada, zilch, nothing. No kids, no nothing. She can't have kids. Now, every year, Elkanah and his family would go to Shiloh and do their sacrifices and do like yearly praying and all that shit. Because Eli, not me, Eli and his sons were priests there. And Elkanah would give Peninnah and her many, many kids and whatever, sons and daughters, their fair share. But because he really liked Hannah, he would give her a double portion to like signify the love. This whole double portion scenario ended up actually causing some jealousy in the household. So Peninnah, and I'm not joking, would just like make fun of Hannah about the fact that she couldn't have kids, which is so fucked up, especially back then. So Hannah would like cry all the time and not eat, which is like honestly a reasonable response. What the fuck? That's so mean. And Elkanah was not fucking helping because he was like, oh, why are you so sad? Why are you crying and not eating? Am I not enough for you? Like, worst fucking response to that scenario. So one year, they go to Shiloh, and they've eaten a bunch of food, and they drank some wine, and it's like the middle of the night, and Hannah, like, leaves their little bedroom area and goes out into the courtyard and is just pouring her heart out in prayer to the Lord. She's crying, and she's silently praying, Lord, remember me, your servant. If you would give me one son, I will fucking guarantee that his whole life is devoted to you, and I'll never shave his head. Which, that last part is not actually very essential, and you can pretty much ignore that. So Eli walks into the courtyard like it's a fucking sitcom, and he sees her crying and like moving her lips without saying anything out loud, and he is immediately like, why the fuck are you drunk at the temple? And Hannah has to be like, nah, dude, I'm praying. What the fuck? Eli's like, my bad, honestly. That's on me. But you know what? Go in peace. Big man upstairs tells me you're getting exactly what you prayed for. Go in peace, lady. And Hannah's just like, thanks, man. Jeez. So she starts eating again and like is happy again and normal. When Elkanah gets up, they worship a little more and they go home. And then the night they get home, they woohoo. And then 9 months later, they have a baby. And she names that son Samuel, which means in Hebrew, God has heard, which I think is very cool. The next year, Elkanah goes back to Shiloh, but Hannah and Samuel stay behind. And then Hannah approaches Elkanah with the idea that once they can get Sammy off the tit, they should give him over to be like under tutelage with Eli so that he can be a priest and she can uphold that whole, his whole life will be dedicated to you thing. So once Sammy boy has eaten solid food, Hannah hands him off to Eli for a lifelong tutelage under the Lord. Hannah actually gives a really beautiful prayer here, but it's not actually integral to the story, so I'm going to omit it. But if you think this is cool, you should read it, because it's really good. But yeah, eventually they leave him there and go home. But apparently, Eli's sons fucking suck. And what they were doing, I'm dead serious, they were stealing offerings from other people so that they could give the offerings under their own name, which is a big no-no. Eli is still super chill though. He blesses Hannah with 5 more kids after she couldn't have any for most of her life. Guess he had a lot of favors to ask. Just kidding, guys. This was the age of miracles, and I will expand on that in another video, but I'm not going to tell you about it now. We are not in the age of miracles right now. I'll give you that. By the time Eli is really old, he's been hearing about this shit for years. So he finally goes to his sons and he's like, why the fuck are you evil? Like, I've been hearing all this bad shit you're doing. And it's like, dude, if you wanted to sin against like a guy, that's fine, right? Like, I can try to help you with that. But if you're going to sin against fucking God, how the fuck am I supposed to be able to help you? And of course, they fucking ignore him. All the while Eli is getting old, Samuel is A, growing and getting older, B, growing in the church, and C, growing in the eyes of the people. Eventually, a priest from somewhere else comes to Eli, and he's like, God says, hey, didn't I help your dad with the Pharaoh? Didn't I pick him out of everybody in fucking Israel to be my priest? Right? I gave you everything. And you're just gonna fucking take from my offerings and steal from me? Well, you know what? Right now, I declare you and your father's family are fucking cut off. In fact, you're gonna be looking around at Israel prospering, and you're gonna be so jealous. Actually, and your sons, and your whole bloodline, yeah, they're gonna be killed by another man, including your sons. Right? And you're going to be looking around like, oh shit, I thought Israel was a prosperous place. But no, I'm going to replace you with a fucking good priest that likes me. And you guys are going to be hoping for a crumb of his swag. So Samuel's laying down, right? He's like a kid. And he hears somebody call for him. So he goes to Eli and he's like, what's up? And Eli's like, what? And he's like, bro, you called me. And he's like, no, I didn't. Go lay back down. And they do this 2 more times before Eli gets a fucking That's So Raven vision. And he's like, wait a minute. This is God trying to talk to you. Go lay back down and talk to God. Eli tells Samuel to go lay back down. And if he hears it again, say, like, think in your head, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So he does that. And God is like, ayo, shit's about to pop off in Israel. And I'm dead ass about that shit about Eli's family. So Samuel sleeps on it. And in the morning, Eli wants to hear what God had to say. And Eli's like, don't hold back. I can take it. So Samuel tells him the whole spiel. And Eli's like, well, it's God. And he can't be wrong. So I guess that shit's just gotta happen. And then over time, Samuel would become known all across Israel as a wise prophet. Israel is at war with the Philistines, and they're getting squad wiped. So they're like, oh, let's bring the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield so God can solo carry. And even the Philistines are like, fuck, God is here. But they win anyway. They kill all of Eli's sons, and they take the fucking Ark. So Eli, who is now 98 years old and blind, asks a guy that he hears fleeing from the battle, hey, how'd it go? And the dude's like, we got so fucked up, all your sons are dead and they stole the Ark. And I'm not joking, Eli falls backwards out of his seat, breaks his fucking neck, and dies. So the Philistines take the Ark home, and they set it next to their statue of Dagon. Next day when they wake up, the statue is tipped over, so they fix it. The next day, tipped over again with the head and the hands broken off. And that's all fun and games. But then all of a sudden the Ark starts giving people cancer. And that's a problem. So they take it to Gath. But then everybody in Gath gets cancer. So they take it to Ekron. And then the same thing happens. Everybody gets cancer. So I'm not joking. They just give it back. But God gets mad that they took it, so he strikes down 70 of them for just fucking with it. So Samuel gathers all of the Israelites because he wants to judge them. But they're afraid because of the Philistines. So Sammy prays really hard, and they beat the Philistines. And I don't mean just one battle. They drive them out of Israel for the rest of Samuel's life. So Samuel gets old, and the Israelites are like, we want a king. Because you are old, and you've been cool while you've been judging us, but if you die, we have literally no one. And Samuel warns them. He's like, look, all a king will do is take your sons and put them in a meaningless war, give all your shit to the 1%, and turn you into fucking slaves. Just like George. But like usual, they fucking ignore him. So Samuel goes outside to see some fucking supermodel guy named Saul. God told him he would be there. Samuel eats with Saul and pretty much immediately knows he's going to be king. Samuel sends Saul on a fucking Skyrim quest that is non-consequential to this story, but it proves that he was chosen by God. And then Sam gathers all the Israelites, anoints Saul king, and then tells them to go home anyway. So the Ammonites are starting shit. They're threatening the Israelites. So Saul gathers literally all the able-bodied Israelites to the point that they outnumber the Ammonites 10-1. He waits one day and just fucking bodies all the Ammonites. It's fucking crazy. When they get back home, they throw a big ass party, and Samuel retires, and he's like, be good, kiddos. So with Samuel out of the picture, Saul gathers 3,000 troops. 2,000 for him, 1,000 for his son Jonathan. And Jonathan goes and fucks up a little Philistine camp, and that pisses them off. So they come back with 36,000 troops and scare off the Israelites. Saul starts tweaking and does a no-no sacrifice, but it's okay because Samuel shows up just in time to tell him he's fucked. So Jonathan is feeling frisky one day, and he takes his armor bearer with him to go check out the Philistine camp, like the main Philistine camp. And he's like, hey, if we show up and they don't want to fight, we have to leave. But if they do want to fight, God is giving us a free W. And fuck, I guess he was right. Because when he gets there, they want to fight, and they just start fucking up these Philistines, causing mass panic amongst the Philistines. When Saul sees the panic, and I mean fucking panic, they're like fighting each other and like freaking the fuck out, he gathers all the Israelites and fucking pushes the Philistines all the way back out of Israel. So they're pursuing the Philistines out of Israel. And for some reason, Saul decides that no one is allowed to eat anything until they have killed every last Philistine. But I guess Jonathan wasn't fucking listening. So he starts eating honey off the tip of his spear in some forest. And he puts everybody into a fucking frenzy. They start freaking the fuck out. Like, I'm serious. They start killing the livestock of the Philistines and just eating it raw. And Saul sees this and he's like, well, I may have made a mistake somewhere. So he lets them all get McDonald's as long as they promise not to eat raw meat. So Saul asks God. He's like, hey, should I keep tracking the Philistines? And he gets left on red. So for some reason, he decides that Jonathan needs to be put to death for disobeying God before all the people are like, dude, this is your fucking fault. It's not his fault. So he just quits following the Philistines and leaves Jonathan alive. So Samuel goes to Saul and he's like, look, I need you to take the Amalekites off the map. So Saul gathers 220,000 men. And then when they get there, the Kenites are there. But they're chill, right? So they tell them to leave. And then they slaughter the Amalekites. However, Saul spares the king and takes all the best livestock to be sacrificed. So God is pissed. And then Samuel's pissed. So he goes to talk to Saul. And Saul is immediately like, the man of the hour, Sammy, my boy. Aren't I doing so good at this anointed by God thing? And Samuel is like, I can literally hear the animals that prove that you sin. And Saul is like, but it's for God though. And Samuel is like, what do you think God likes more? Sacrifices or people fucking listening? Of course, Saul starts asking for a second chance and all that shit. And Samuel is like, God is taking away king privileges. And no Xbox for a week. Samuel locks the fuck in. And he's like, bring me the Amalekite king. And this king, having been spared, is like, so we're cool, right? And Samuel cuts him to bits. So no more king for the Amalekites, and a soon-to-be new king for the Israelites. So God is talking to Samuel, and he's like, dude, you got to get over your ex-king. Go find a new one. In fact, you should go talk to my buddy Jesse and pick one of his sons to be king. So Samuel goes to Bethlehem and gathers Jesse and his sons. And Sammy is peeping out these dudes, and he sees this big-ass buff dude. But God is like, nah, not him. So he goes through all of Jesse's sons, no king. And of course, Samuel is out of kids, so he's like, Jesse, you got any more kids? And he's like, yeah, actually I do. I have a son named David who's out in the field. And surprise, surprise, David is going to be king. So I guess Saul is like schizophrenic or something and starts tweaking every once in a while. So his servants are like, you need some good music, man. In fact, my buddy Jesse, he's got a son out there who does the sheep. He's real good on that little harpsichord thing. So he summons David to the palace, and they hit it off immediately. And David essentially becomes Saul's right-hand man. Well, this is by far the most famous part of 1 Samuel. So I'll try to do it justice and try to make this entertaining. Well, the Philistines are starting shit again. They have gathered in the valley between them and the Israelites, and they have their biggest, baddest motherfucker named Goliath. He puts out a challenge to the Israelites. A 1v1 for the whole pie. Enslavement. So Saul, in his old age and in no fit state to fight anybody, calls 3 of Jesse's sons to the battle. Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah. I know, right? You expected one of them to be David, right? Actually, a day or so later, David is sent to the battlefield by his father Jesse on one important job, one duty, snack duty. He's bringing snacks to his brothers on the front lines. So they have a few wide-scale skirmishes, and then David shows up with the snacks. And once again, Goliath does the thing where he's like, hey, 1v1 for the whole pie, baby. And of course, everybody's like afraid of him because he's big as shit. The other Israelites at the battle are telling David, they're like, hey, whoever kills this guy is going to become rich and probably get to marry the king's daughter. And David is like, this limp dick loser? So he goes to Saul and he's like, dude, I'll kill this guy just to get him off your back. Of course, Saul is like, dude, you're 12. But David is like, dude, we have the God of the universe on our side. Easy claps. Saul decks him out. He gives him a whole suit of armor and a big ass sword. And David is kind of fucking around with it. And he's just like, dude, I don't know how to use this shit. This is just going to get me killed. So he goes out to the battlefield with nothing but a sling and a couple of fucking rocks. So David gets to the battlefield and Goliath is like, you brought a fucking kid? This is going to be too fucking easy. And David is like, you have come here with swords and shields. I come here carrying the will of our God, and he has given you into my hand. And with that, he launches one fucking stone right through the skull of Goliath, killing him. While everyone is stunned, David calmly runs up, grabs a sword, cuts his damn head off, and signals the end of the conflict. So Saul is now acting as king without God's approval. And David is basically his George Washington, his acting general, the guy that fucks everybody up for him. And then David and Jonathan, who is Saul's son, become good buddies. And this will be important soon. David is actually so successful that the people are like, hey, yo, Saul's cool and all, but this David fellow's the bee's knees. And of course, that pisses off Saul. So he low-key tries to murder David with a fucking spear, but he misses and David runs away. Saul actually lowers the amount of men that David is commanding, but he's just as successful, which pisses off Saul even more. Saul tries to be nice and let David marry one of his daughters, but David is like, nah, I'm actually good on that. But he does actually like one of Saul's other daughters, Michal, and asks to marry her. But then Saul gets this like 4D chess move in his mind where he's like, oh, I'll get him killed in battle. Hey, David, bring me 100 foreskins and the bitch is yours. But David literally goes out, kills 200 Philistines, takes all their foreskins, and brings them back onto the table for fucking Saul. So David marries Michal, and then with all options taken off the table, Saul goes nuclear. And he tells Jonathan and his servants that they need to kill David. But of course, Jonathan is homies with David. I told you this shit would come back later. So he goes and talks to David. So Jonathan has David go away for a little bit, and he tries to talk to Saul and convince him not to kill David. And you're going to think that this works, but it actually didn't. We'll see later. So Jonathan, assuming that Saul would stop trying to kill David, has David come back to work. He actually scares off the Philistines again by bodying them so hard. But then Saul starts tweaking again. He's having a schizophrenic episode. So David's playing his little fucking music. Boom! He tries the fucking spear thing again. Of course, David escapes, and this time he runs to his home that he shares with Michal. So as soon as he gets home, Michal is like, dude, you got to get the fuck out of here. They will kill you. So he sneaks out through the window, and she leaves like an anime waifu body pillow in bed instead of him to like keep them off his scent. So the next morning, Saul's messengers get there with the intent to kill him. And she's like, he's sick. And they're like, okay, let me see him. Assuming that they were just going to murder this guy in bed. And when they get there, the fucking body pillow is in the fucking bed. And they're like, why have you lied to us? And she's like, why the fuck would I help you kill my husband? So David runs off and meets up with Samuel in Ramah, right? And he tells him everything that's going on. And Samuel's like, holy shit. So they go hang out in Naioth. Well, Saul hears about that and sends messengers to go fucking kill him in Naioth. But when they get there, they are overcome with the power of the Lord, and they just start spitting out prophecies, and to the point where they just have to go home. He does this 2 more times with the same shit happening before he's like, well, I need a new approach. So Saul is like, fuck it, I'm gonna go get his ass myself. And then when he gets to Ramah outside of Naioth, he literally starts doing the same shit with the prophecies. He is walking all the way to Naioth from Ramah, spouting prophecies. When he gets to the temple in Naioth, he strips butt the fuck ass naked and just is like crying, spewing these prophecies involuntarily. And it's fucking crazy. David uses this opportunity to take the fuck off, and he meets up with Jonathan, and the first thing out of his mouth is, what the fuck did I do? And Jonathan is like, bruh, trust me. My dad said he'd stop trying to kill you, and he wouldn't lie to me. And David is like, look, he knows we're homies, so he didn't want to freak you out, but I can confirm he is definitely still trying to kill me. Jonathan is like, okay, I believe you. What do you want me to do? And David is like, okay, I'm going to go hide in the field. You go back to your father. Wait 3 days. If he asks where I am in 3 days, tell him, hey, I went to Bethlehem. I'm doing a family tradition. It's whatever. If he doesn't give a fuck, tell me. I'll come back. No harm, no foul. If he freaks the fuck out and wants to know where I am, tell me so I can get the fuck out of here before he kills me. And Jonathan's like, bet, I can do that. John says they'll use the arrow system. And you'll come to see that this is fucking worthless. But basically, if the arrow is far, not good. If it's close to you, you're good. That's the arrow system. And before he leaves, Jonathan gives this long-ass speech that isn't pertinent to this video, but is really pretty and cool about how he is loyal to David. It's cool. Read it if you haven't. So Johnny goes home, and for 2 days, nothing, nada. And then on the second day, Saul is like, hey, where's David? And John gives him the whole Bethlehem family thing. And Saul freaks the fuck out, calls Jonathan a son of a bitch, and is like, you better fucking tell me where he is so I can kill him. So, of course, Jonathan does the arrow thing, but then they talk briefly, so you're like, what the fuck is the point of the arrows? And David takes off. So David arrives in Nob, and he talks to the priest that's there, and he kind of white lies a little bit, and he's like, hey, I'm here on assignment. You guys got any food for me? And he's like, bro, all we got is the holy bread. But David is fueled by God, so he takes that. And then as he's leaving, he's like, hey, you guys got any weapons here or anything? And the priest is like, yeah, we have fucking Goliath's big-ass sword. You want it? David's like, fuck yeah, I want it. So David escapes to Gath, but when he gets there, the king is like, hey, fuck you, and he's like threatening him and shit. So David acts retarded, and then the king of Gath is like, well, what fucking use do I have for another retard around here? And he just fucking lets him leave. So David escapes to the cave of Adullam, or however the fuck you say that. And whenever his family hears about this, all 400 of them meet with him in Adullam, and basically he has an army of 400 people. David decides to leave his parents in the safety of the king of Moab, Achish, while he's doing this whole running around, trying not to get killed by Saul thing. So Saul gathers all of his servants, and he's like, Ayo, is anybody gonna fucking help me find this guy? And Doug. I'm gonna call him Doug. Doug is like, I saw him in Nob. He was talking to a fucking priest. Saul gathers all of the priests from Nob and is basically like, why are you guys working against me? And the priest that talked to David is like, dude, it's fucking David. He's like your top guy. How the fuck was I supposed to know all of a sudden you don't like him and working with him is like against you? And so Saul, despite this, orders for all of them to be killed. And then even his servants are like, dude, I can't fucking do that. So he just has Doug do it. In fact, Doug kills everybody in Nob except for one son of the head priest named Abiathar, who goes and tells David what happened. Abiathar also tells David that the Philistines are fucking up a city called Keilah, and David is immediately down to go help. But his, like, family army is like, dude, we got enough problems going on. So David puts it to the big man upstairs, and he gives them the green light. So David and his family go and fuck up the Philistines and save the city. Well, Saul hears about this and immediately mobilizes the entire Israeli army. And so David asks God 2 questions. A, is Saul coming? And B, would the people of Keilah give me up if he got here? Both of those were a yes, so him and his army take the fuck off into the wilderness. So Saul can't find David until the Ziphites come up to him and they're like, hey, isn't he out in the woods? And Saul is like, bet. So he starts chasing him, through multiple cities, over mountains, like for a while, until they get word that the Philistines are attacking back home. So they have to fucking go back home and fight them. When that matter is sorted out, Saul hears that David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi. Saul mobilizes 3,000 forces to go and find David. And while they're looking for him, Saul stops in a cave to take a piss. And it just so happens to be the cave that David and all his people are deeper within. And so everyone's like, dude, David, you gotta kill this motherfucker. But David is like, dude, it's literally God's anointed. I can't just fucking kill him. So what he does is he takes his sword and he cuts a little sliver off of his robe while he's pissing and then just kind of lets him walk on. So David catches up with Saul and he shows him the piece off of his robe or whatever. And he's like, look, I could have fucking killed you. I don't want to hurt you. I spared you. And Saul is like, you're a better man than me. And he goes to leave. But before he leaves, he's like, hey, David, can you not murder my entire family lineage whenever you become king? And David agrees, and he fucking leaves. Saul just fucking leaves. At about this time, Samuel dies. And all the Israelites gather, and they mourn the passing of Samuel. So David and his family army moved to the wilderness of Paran outside of Carmel. And there's this rich guy in Carmel named Nabal, right? And he's got this hot-ass wife named Abigail. And David sends some messengers from his people with basically a little speech to try to get some free food. And Nabal is so fucking rude. He's like, who the fuck is David? Yeah, a lot of fucking slaves come free of their masters nowadays. He ain't special. What, am I supposed to give every fucking loser that comes out here a free feast? Suck eggs, pussy. And David, when he hears that he said this, is like, fuck him, man. I wasn't even gonna fucking do this, but I'm gonna fucking kill this guy. So he literally takes and mobilizes his 400-person army towards Carmel. Some messengers get to Abigail, and they tell her what happened, and she freaks the fuck out, and she immediately gets a bunch of food and a bunch of wine, and puts it on donkeys, and just fucking takes off to try to intercept David. She meets up with David and his men right outside Carmel, and she's like, holy shit, take all this stuff. I know my husband was a dick. I know that God destroys your enemies, and we don't want to be on that list. You take this stuff and my apology. And David is like, thank God you made it here in time. Holy shit. I was about to fucking slaughter you guys, hella sinful style. Good thing you made it here, jeez Louise. Go on home, we ain't gonna hurt you. When Abigail gets home, Nabal is already eating and drinking like a fucking 600-pound life contestant, right? So he goes to sleep, and in the morning, she tells him what happens, and he is literally so shocked that within 10 days, he fucking dies of a heart attack. David hears that Nabal has died, and he's like, so I'm hearing Abigail is single? And now that might sound bad, but you gotta understand, but by this point, Michal had already been remarried to somebody else because Saul didn't like David. He also married some other lady at the same time, but that's not important. So the Ziphites do the exact fucking same thing again and reveal David's position to Saul. So Saul mobilizes another 3,000-man army to go out into the woods. And so David sends out spies to kind of peep out the camp, and they're like, okay, it's over here. And then him and Abishai, I'm going to assume that's how you say that, Abishai, his like armor bearer, basically go to check it out, and they find everybody asleep. Abishai is like, dude, David, you have to fucking kill him this time. Come on. And David is like, look, like it or not, he's God's anointed. I can't just kill him. So they steal his spear from like right next to where he was laying, and they take off about far enough away and on top of like a hill that they can't just like come and attack them for it. And then David calls out to Saul and the other people there. So David calls out and he's like, Abner, the new commander, you fucking suck at your job. Look at this fucking spear. I could have killed all of you while you were sleeping. And Saul is like, yes, you are so right. Can I have my spear back? So David sends a guy to give him the spear back. And Saul is like, good old David. I knew you'd be a good sport about it. And so David now realizes that Saul will literally follow him to the ends of Israel. So David leaves Israel. David and his family go and live with the Philistines for 1 year and 4 months. David essentially fulfills the same role as like a George Washington acting general for the Philistines, but he would lie to Achish, the king, and say that he's fighting and killing all these Israelites while he's out there, and he essentially becomes his right-hand man as well. When the time finally came for the Philistines to fight Israel for real, Achish told David, hey man, you're going to be fighting on the front lines, and David agrees. So during the night, Saul sneaks away from the palace, and he illegally sees a medium, someone who can talk to the dead, and summons the ghost of Samuel. And Sammy is like, dude, what the fuck do you want? I was just dead. Like, I was in heaven and shit, chilling, and then all of a sudden, I'm fucking here. What do you want? And Saul is like, dude, I'm fucked. The Philistines are coming, and my connection with God is on the fucking fritz. Samuel is like, dude, if God can't help you, how the fuck am I supposed to help you? God clearly prefers David, and maybe if you didn't fucking steal from him, maybe he would like you more. In fact, you know what? Yeah, Philistines are coming, and you're fucked, pal. And Saul hears this and doesn't eat for days. So the Philistines are gearing up for battle against Israel. And David is there with all of his men. And some of the lords of the Philistines see them and they're like, hey, yo, what's up with the Hebrews here? Why the fuck are these people here? And Achish tries to be like, dude, come on, this guy rocks. Come on, man, he's good. But the fucking lords of the Philistines put their feet down, and David is actually sent away back home from the battlefield. When David gets back to Ziklag, he finds it to have been burned down, looted, and everyone there, including his 2 wives, have been kidnapped by the Amalekites. So David asks Abiathar, the guy from earlier, the priest guy from earlier, for the ephod, which is like a holy vest that the priest would wear. And he's like, I need God on my side. I should go fuck these guys up, right, Abiathar? And Abiathar's like, fucking duh, man. So David mobilizes 400 men towards them and follows the Amalekites, and he leaves 200 behind to like watch over their stuff. While they're following the Amalekites, they find a rival soldier dying in the middle of the desert. So they give him food and water and like nurse him back to health. And then David is like, who do you work for? And the dude's like, I'm gonna be real with you. I was an Amalekite, but they fucking left me for dead. You promise not to kill me? I'll tell you everything you need to know about catching them. And David fucking agrees. It's a good deal. So other than 400 men who took off on camels when they saw David approaching, David kills all the Amalekites, gets all of the hostages back, returns everything that was stolen, and takes all of their livestock as spoils of war. I'm dead fucking serious. Think about that. For David, it was a net positive to get robbed. When they get back to Ziklag, the 400 who went with him are like, fuck these 200 guys. We're not giving them shit. And then David literally was like, fuck that, dude. And made it a law across all of Israel that you had to give everybody their fair share. In fact, David actually goes back around and gives a fair share portion to every town that they camped in the wilderness of while they were running from Saul. So in the war with the Philistines and the Israelites, the Philistines had already killed all of Saul's sons, and they had hit Saul with a couple arrows. So he falls back into the palace, and he tells his armor bearer, he's like, hey man, you gotta kill me. And the armor bearer's like, fuck that, dude, I'm not gonna fucking do that. So Saul unalives himself, falls on his sword. Upon seeing this, the armor bearer does the exact same thing. And now Saul and his sons and the king of Israel is no more. The day after the battle, the Philistines take the bodies of Saul and his sons, hang them up on a wall somewhere. Eventually somebody comes and takes their bodies, takes them to Jabesh, cremates them, buries the bones, and that is the conclusion of 1 Samuel. So by the end of 1 Samuel, we've got no king, David's a fucking Philistine, Samuel is dead, and all of this shit happened, right? It is a crazy story. I fucking loved making this video. It was super tedious and a lot of work because I have to write all my notes out on paper because I use my phone to record. But wow, 1 Samuel is so cool, and it ends on such a fucking cliffhanger. I bet you guys can't wait for 2 Samuel. But yeah, if you liked, if you really liked it, subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.